"You're a weak man, Tom. A weak man living off me." That's how it started. She said it so calmly, like she was stating a fact. No anger, no emotion, just pure contempt. We were standing in our kitchen, the one she'd proudly called her kitchen, because she'd paid for the renovation last summer. Megan had just come home from work, heels clicking across the tile, perfume still fresh. I'd made dinner, grilled chicken, pasta, a salad. I thought maybe we'd have a quiet night. But then she looked at the table and laughed softly. "Trying to be useful," she said. "That's cute." It stung. Not because of what she said, but because of how natural it sounded coming from her mouth. Like this was the new normal. I didn't respond. I rarely did anymore. Every time I tried to defend myself, she twisted it back, said I was being defensive, or emotional, or acting like a victim. So I just stood there, my hand still holding the serving spoon, while she opened her laptop and started eating without a word of thanks. Half an hour later, she started again. "Do you even know how much I paid this month?" she said, not looking up from her screen. "Rent, electricity, your phone bill, even your stupid car insurance. All of it. I carry everything, Tom. Everything." She listed each one like she was reading a receipt for my existence. Then came the final line, the one that broke something inside me. "So maybe next time, before you open your mouth about anything, remember who keeps this roof over your head." I wish I could say I shouted back. That I stood up for myself, or at least walked out. But I didn't. I just felt something collapse quietly inside, a structure giving way from the inside out. She looked at me then, eyes sharp. "Since I'm the provider, you obey me. Got it?" I nodded once. And she smiled. That smile, satisfied, victorious, burned into me like acid. That night I lay awake in the guest room, not our bed, hers, and stared at the ceiling. I replayed her words over and over. Weak. Dependent. Useless. But beneath the humiliation, something else was starting to take shape. Not anger. Not yet. Resolve. The next morning, while she slept, I got up early and drove to the diner near the highway. Ordered black coffee. Pulled out my old laptop, the one with missing keys and a cracked screen. My resume sat untouched in a dusty folder. I opened it. Started updating it. I wasn't going to stay this man. I wasn't going to be the weakling she could spit on whenever she felt powerful. Hours passed. I applied for every logistics, transport, and operations job I could find, anything that would get me out from under her shadow. When I finally came home, she was in a video call with her boss. Laughing. Her tone light, playful. I paused for a moment in the hallway, just listening. It wasn't professional laughter. It was intimate. Familiar. When she hung up, I asked casually, "Good call?" She looked at me like I'd interrupted something sacred. "Business," she snapped. "Not that you'd understand." She walked past me and closed the bedroom door. That night, I sat in the dark, scrolling through my emails. And that's when I saw it, a message from a mid-sized import firm in Dallas. They wanted to interview me for a logistics analyst position. For the first time in months, I smiled. Not a big smile, just enough to remind myself that I still could. I didn't tell her. Over the next 2 weeks, I played my role perfectly. The quiet husband. The obedient one. I cooked, cleaned, let her believe she'd broken me. But every night, while she scrolled through her phone or went on her business trips, I studied. Watched case studies. Prepared answers. And then, it happened. The interview. The offer. They wanted me to start in 2 weeks. That evening, when I came home, she was drinking wine on the couch, scrolling through her phone. "I got a job offer," I said. She didn't even look up. Finally, she muttered. "Maybe now you'll stop leeching off me." I nodded. No reaction. But something inside me shifted, clean and sharp, like a blade finding its edge again. That night, I decided I wouldn't argue, or explain, or beg for respect. I would just leave. But before I walked away, I needed to understand why she hated me so much. Why every word from her mouth dripped with disgust. And then, the answer arrived by accident, in the form of a notification that lit up her iPad while she was in the shower. A text from a name I didn't recognize. "Last night was incredible. Wish he'd stay the weakling forever. Rick." Except my name isn't Rick. I stared at the screen, heart hammering. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel small. I felt awake. At first, I thought I'd misread it. Maybe it was a joke, maybe a coworker. But that winking emoji, that smug, playful tone, didn't leave much room for interpretation. My stomach dropped. My hands were trembling, but I forced myself to unlock her iPad. She'd never bothered to change her password, still our wedding date. I opened the Messages app. And there it was. Hundreds of texts, photos, and voice notes. The name at the top of the thread, Richard Palmer. Her boss. The same man she always mentioned with admiration. Richard really believes in me. Richard says I have leadership potential. I remembered all those overnight conferences, all the urgent presentations she couldn't talk about. I used to believe her. Not anymore. The first few messages were flirtatious, harmless enough. Then came the late-night ones. The hotel addresses. The inside jokes. The photos I wish I could erase from my memory. They'd been seeing each other for nearly 8 months. 8 months of lies. 8 months of her calling me a weakling while sneaking around with the man who signed her paychecks. And the worst part? They talked about me. He's still doing the cooking thing? Yeah, she replied. Poor guy's trying to make himself useful. Kinda sad, really. My throat tightened. I scrolled faster. She'd sent him photos of the dinner I'd made that night. The same one she laughed at. She even joked that I was her live-in maid. He replied, at least he's good for something. Something inside me cracked. Not rage. Something colder. I took screenshots of everything, messages, photos, emails. I saved them to a flash drive and hid it in my briefcase. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it yet, but I knew I needed it. That night, when she came out of the shower, she smiled faintly. You're quiet again, she said. What, sulking? I looked at her and forced a small smile. Just tired. She laughed softly, kissed me on the cheek, and went to bed. I watched her walk away, towel around her hair, pretending she still lived in a house full of lies she controlled. But not for much longer. The next day, I opened a new bank account under my name only. I moved half of our joint savings, my half, the one I'd earned before I lost my job, into it. I rerouted my new paycheck there too. Then I started removing my name from everything, utilities, lease renewal, streaming accounts. I wanted to vanish cleanly, leaving behind nothing but silence. Over the next few weeks, I pretended to be the same old Tom. The obedient one. I made her coffee. I asked about her day. I let her believe she'd broken me for good. But every night, I reviewed my plan. Then, one afternoon, I got a message request on Facebook from a woman named Dana Palmer. It took me a second to connect the dots. Richard's wife. Her message was short. Hi, Tom. I think our spouses are having an affair. Can we talk? My pulse spiked. I typed back one word, yes. We met in a small cafe on a Tuesday morning. She looked exhausted, dark circles, trembling hands around her coffee cup. She said she'd suspected for a while. Found one of Megan's earrings in Richard's luggage after a conference. She just needed proof. I handed her the flash drive. It's all there, I said. She stared at me for a long moment. Thank you. Then she smiled, not warmly, not kindly. It was the smile of someone who'd already decided what she was going to do. 2 days later, the news broke. Richard Palmer was fired for professional misconduct and ethical violations. HR apparently found enough to remove him on the spot. Dana had gone scorched earth. When Megan came home that evening, she was shaking. I can't believe this, she muttered, pacing the kitchen. Someone must have leaked everything. My boss got fired. They're investigating everyone in the department. I bit my tongue to keep from laughing. She was too busy panicking to notice how calm I was. Over the next few days, things unraveled fast. HR called her in for questioning. Colleagues distanced themselves. Her name started circulating in hushed tones. She blamed everyone but herself. Then one night, she snapped. This is all your fault, she screamed. Ever since you lost your job, you've been bad luck. I had everything before you dragged me down. I stared at her quietly, then said, you had everything, and you threw it away. She didn't answer. Just stood there, chest heaving, realizing for the first time that I wasn't afraid of her anymore. That night, while she slept, I packed my bags. In the morning, I left a note on the counter. You were right, Megan. You paid for everything. So now, you can keep it all. The weakling. I locked the door behind me, took one last look at the apartment that had become my prison, and walked away. No yelling. No drama. Just quiet freedom. When I got into my car, I didn't feel broken anymore. I felt clean. But I had no idea that karma wasn't done with her yet. The first few weeks after leaving her felt surreal. I rented a tiny one-bedroom apartment downtown, nothing fancy, but mine. The walls were bare, the mattress sat on the floor, and half my things were still in boxes, but I slept better there than I had in years. No yelling. No contempt. No walking on eggshells in my own home. I started my new job a week later. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. I worked quietly, learned fast, and didn't tell anyone much about my personal life. My coworkers thought I was just another quiet guy trying to rebuild after a layoff. And in a way, that was true. But inside, I was healing from something far worse than unemployment. I was healing from being erased. Every morning, I made coffee in silence and reminded myself, you don't owe anyone an apology for existing. 2 months went by before I heard from her again. The first message came at midnight. Megan, can we talk? Please. I didn't reply. Then she called. 6 times in a row. I finally muted her number. A few days later, she showed up at my office. My stomach tightened the second I saw her through the glass door, same sharp features, but thinner, paler. Her usual polished look was gone. Her eyes were red and swollen. Tom, she said softly. Please. I stepped outside with her, mostly to avoid a scene. She started talking fast, about how her department had let her go after the investigation, how she couldn't find another job, how her reputation was unfairly destroyed. I lost everything, she whispered. Everything I worked for. For a second, I almost pitied her. Almost. Then she said it. I know I treated you badly. I said horrible things. But I was under so much stress, and I didn't mean it like that. You know I still love you, right? I just stared at her. Love me? I said quietly. Megan, you humiliated me. You called me weak. You laughed about me with another man. You sent him pictures of my dinners and told him I was pathetic. Her face went pale. I made mistakes, she stammered. But we can fix this. We can start over. I shook my head. No. You made choices. And now you're living with them. She reached for my arm, but I stepped back. Tom, please, she said, her voice breaking. I don't have anyone else. That line, I don't have anyone else, it hit me differently. Not because I felt sorry for her, but because I realized she finally understood what it felt like to be powerless. To depend on someone who didn't care anymore. I turned away. You always said I was living off you, I said quietly. Now it's your turn to see how that feels. And I walked back inside. That night, I opened the old photo folder on my laptop, our wedding, our vacations, our smiles that once looked real. I hovered over the pictures for a long time. Then I selected all and hit delete. For the first time since I'd met her, I felt nothing. No anger, no pain, no nostalgia. Just peace. But life has a way of making circles. About a month later, I got an email from my boss. The company was opening a new operations branch, and they wanted me to manage it. Double the pay, full relocation support. I accepted immediately. Within 6 months, I'd gone from unemployed and humiliated to running a regional department. My savings were growing. I even started going to the gym again. My coworkers respected me. I smiled more often. And just when I thought that chapter was finally behind me, karma decided to deliver its final message. One evening, as I was heading out of the office, my phone buzzed. A friend from my old neighborhood had texted me a link. It was a local news article. Former marketing manager faces lawsuit for workplace misconduct. There was a photo attached, Megan, standing outside a courthouse, her face caught mid-blink, pale and exhausted. Apparently, Richard's wife, Dana, had filed a civil suit for emotional and professional damages, including evidence of how Megan's affair had contributed to her husband's misconduct. The company was using the same material to countersue for reputational harm. I read the whole article in silence, then closed the screen. The man who had once been the weakling smiled. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about balance. She had built her identity on power, control, and money, and when those disappeared, there was nothing left to hold her up. Meanwhile, I had rebuilt from the bottom, with nothing but quiet determination and the memory of her laughter in my ears. I didn't celebrate. I didn't tell anyone. I just went home, made dinner, and sat in silence, letting the weight of it all settle. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel weak. I felt free. But a year later, fate decided we weren't done yet. And that's when I saw her again, in the last place I ever expected. It had been a little over a year since I'd seen her last. A year of quiet, of progress, of finally remembering what peace felt like. I had bought a small house on the outskirts of Dallas, nothing extravagant, but it was mine. The kind of place where the morning sunlight hit the kitchen table just right, and the silence didn't feel heavy anymore. Life had stabilized. I'd been promoted again, operations director this time. The salary was more than I ever thought I'd earn. The weak man living off her paycheck now had a staff, a company car, and a home he paid for in full. I wasn't looking for revenge anymore. But life, apparently, wasn't done writing that story for me. It happened one ordinary Thursday evening. I'd stopped by a grocery store on my way home. I was in line, holding a basket of vegetables and a six-pack, when I heard a familiar voice at the customer service desk. Soft, tired, but unmistakable. Megan. She turned, startled, and our eyes met. For a moment, time folded in on itself. Same woman, different life. Her expensive clothes replaced by a plain polo shirt with a retail logo stitched on it. Makeup gone. Hair tied back, dull. The proud, condescending posture, gone. She froze. Tom? I nodded once. Hey. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I could see it in her face, embarrassment, maybe regret, maybe something deeper. She walked toward me slowly. You look different. I feel different, I said. Her eyes filled with tears she was fighting to hold back. I heard you're doing well. Someone from my old company mentioned you got promoted. I'm happy for you. I could tell she meant it, at least halfway. She hesitated, then whispered, you probably hate me. I thought about it. I did, I admitted. For a long time. But hate's still a kind of connection. I don't feel that anymore. She swallowed hard. I know I ruined everything. I hurt you. I was cruel. I thought if I made you smaller, I'd feel bigger. I thought success would keep me safe. I stayed silent. Sometimes silence says more than words ever could. She wiped her eyes quickly. I lost my apartment, she said softly. Can't find a marketing job anywhere. No one will touch me after the lawsuit. I'm working here for now. She gestured to the store. It's not much, but it's something. I nodded. At least it's honest work. Her lips trembled. You must think I'm pathetic. I shook my head. No. Just empty. She flinched. I'm sorry, Tom, she said quietly. You didn't deserve any of it. For a second, I saw flashes, the nights she laughed at me, the messages she sent, the contempt in her eyes as she called me a weakling. But I also saw the woman who used to hold my hand when we had nothing, who used to believe in me before ego consumed her. I sighed. We all pay for what we build, Megan. You built control. I built peace. She looked down, tears falling onto her uniform. You got your revenge, she whispered. I smiled faintly. No. You gave it to me. Then I turned, paid for my groceries, and walked out. Outside, the evening air was warm, the sky bleeding into deep orange. I stood by my car for a moment, just breathing. I thought about how full circle everything had come. How she'd spent years reminding me how powerless I was, only to find herself standing in the same place, powerless, small, looking for someone to validate her again. But I wasn't that man anymore. When I got home, I put the groceries away and stepped out onto my porch. The cicadas hummed in the distance. My phone buzzed, a work email, a reminder about next week's leadership meeting. I smiled. Everything she said I couldn't be, capable, independent, respected, I'd become. Not to prove her wrong, but to finally prove myself right. I sat there until the sun disappeared behind the trees, beer in hand, thinking about how quiet redemption feels. It doesn't roar. It doesn't announce itself. It just arrives, like peace after a long storm. And maybe that's the real revenge, not watching someone fall, but realizing you no longer care that they did. Because the truth is, she was right about one thing. I was weak once. But not anymore.